Hello, my name is Abby Gold. I'm an extension specialist and nutrition and wellness at NDSU. So I'm a non-teaching faculty person, so I'm just pleased to be up here talking about food because this is my passion, just like Gretchen's passion. And I've been thinking about the efforts of feeding 9 billion people around the world and how we've been told that we have to ramp up our food production by about 50%. And then I've been thinking about, well, wait a second, is it really that much that we have to ramp up our food production? And is there another thing that we're not thinking about? And that has to do with actually the amount of food that we're producing, which is about enough for 4,600 calories a day worldwide. Of course, not everybody gets 4,600 calories. We get about 2,000 calories available to us in this country. So I'm thinking, there has to be something else we can do besides ramping up our production if production is the thing that does contribute to global warming, climate change. And that thing is what I want to talk to you about today, and it is food waste. And I'm talking about food waste and taking some information from the recent report by the Natural Resource Defense Council, their report, How America is Losing Up to 40% of its food farm to fork. So what I want to try to do today is try to see that slide way down there, but I can't, is to understand the impact of food waste on the United States and to try to come up with some practical solutions for us as consumers, also understanding that we can take community action, and there are things within the food system that we need to understand a little bit better. So what I'll do today is propose some solutions at every level of the food supply. And what I want to do is just test your food waste knowledge just a little bit at first. So what do you think, which fruit and vegetable is most often wasted? Just shout out one or two. Tomatoes, what was it? Bananas. One more. Apples. Corn, okay. And what percentage of our fresh water does food production consume? 80%? Don't worry, the answers will come in a little bit here. And what percentage of our land does food production consume? Here it's a little bit more. 50, okay. And what percentage of that food goes uneaten? Well, we saw the answer before, it was 40%. So the answer to that first question was, nobody got this one. Did anybody shout this one out? Potatoes? And then I'm going to say bananas. And we consume 80% of fresh water in the United States, and 50% of the land in the United States is used for food production. And 40% of that food goes uneaten. That's a pretty incredible amount. When I think about that, when I think about all of the effort that's going into producing technology that can produce more food, I'm thinking, there are some pretty simple things that we could do actually to reduce food waste that wouldn't really demand a big technological fix. So in addition to the fact that food production eats up 10% of the total U.S. energy budget, and food decomposing in landfills accounts for 23% of methane gas. I'm going to change the way I say it now, methane gas. 23% of U.S. methane gas from decomposing food in landfills. Why do we waste so much food in the United States? I mean, we have to eat. So, but why does so much of it go uneaten or cooked and then wasted? And the more food that consumers waste, the more food that producers are able to sell. So think about it. If we're producing 4,600 calories a day, somehow people have to buy that. All right? So it's in the best interest of food marketers and food producers to try to get us to buy as much food as we can. Take a look at this picture. This is from a book called What the World Eats. I love has anybody seen this book? Just some great pictures from around the world. The photographers lived with a family for a week and asked them to share their food, share their lives with them. And at the end of the week, they took these pictures of what that family eats in 1 week. And this is in the United States right here. Look at all the boxed foods, the processed foods, very, very few fruits and vegetables that are, like you see the broccoli there. You see the bananas and grapes and apples. Everything else, though, is packaged. Okay, here's China. So, and the other Asian countries in the book look a lot like that. So, U.S. consumers waste 10 times more food per capita than those in Southeast Asia and Asian countries. 10 times more food. And we have increased the amount of food that we're eating and that we're producing since the 1970s, and that's not even that long of a period of time. It's a speck on our human chronological calendar. The good news is there was once a time when we ate less food. Or we thought we needed less food. And Gretchen, I just love that term you use, the downshifting of America, because the downshifting of America is also going to require that we reevaluate our food system. We reevaluate simple things like food portions. It's just so here's a little chart from the report by NRDC. And here you see the different categories within the food system and where food waste is coming from. And unfortunately, most of the food waste is coming from consumer losses. And that's a little bit what I want to focus on here today. I know that we're talking a lot about what's going on globally and what's happening, systemically, but consumers are a part of the system, and we need to recognize some of the simple changes that we can personally make. And those changes then, as Gretchen says again, because I learned a lot from your talk, reach out into the community and make our community a better place to live. So here's the food consumed versus the food lost. And you see the biggest loss is in grains and seafood and fruits and vegetables. And the least amount of loss is in meat and milk. So I'll just touch on a few of the farming and the processing, distribution, and retail, and then move on to the consumer aspect. So here you see with farmers, the food loss, is market driven, obviously. If the farmers know that a certain commodity has an especially low price to it in any given year, they might be apt to leave food in the field because they know that the cost of getting it out of the field is not worth the money that they're going to be able to get for it. And there's some ways that farmers can cut their losses or help alleviate this problem. For example, in California, farmers get tax credits, a 10% tax credit, not a tax deduction, a tax credit for food donation to food banks and food gleaning organizations. And we need to really encourage more regional food systems because there are less food losses when food has to travel less amount of time or less distance. And processing. An incredible amount of food is lost during the processing with the trimming and the deboning and the peeling of foods. Like think about baby carrots. Those are actually whole carrots. They start out as whole carrots at one time. But on the other hand, the whole carrots that are used to make baby carrots are the ones that we can't sell in the bags at the grocery store. So those are seeing another purpose. But what can we do with the trimmings and the peelings that come off of those baby carrots? Are they then being fed to animals, for example? So how can we close that loop? Or are those trimmings being composted? Distribution is a big thing too. This is, we can see improper handling of food at the retail level. We can see rejected shipments coming through. We can see, dented cans, for example. Do we really need to send those back or not sell them? And so strategies for this include proper training of personnel and even online solutions like what we're going to have in Fargo Moorhead with the Prairie Roots Food Co-op. We're going to have an online buying system, virtual system for buying food from local farmers. Retail losses. The one thing I want to mention here is you know all the little messages on packages like use by, sell by, expiration dates? Those are completely voluntary. There is no law that says those labels have to be on the packaging. And that confuses consumers. And when you see a use by date, my kids yell at me all the time when I keep milk over the use by date. Mom, it's bad. Of course it's not bad. Just smell it and you can tell if it's gone sour. So let's go with that principle. Let's use our common sense. So just remember that when you go to the store and you look at the use by, the sell by, expiration dates. Actually, expiration dates probably should be followed. But so by a law, a store can still sell you that food. They can still sell it to you. So let's talk about some of the consumer things that we can do personally to move this forward. So we as personal consumers are reducing weight. Let's talk about valuing food. Let's not go to the store and look for the most perfect apple or the perfect tomato. Have you ever eaten a good tomato that is perfectly round and perfectly red? The best tomatoes are odd shaped, have some scarring on them. The best tomatoes are those homegrown tomatoes. So let's get it out of our heads that there's some perfect looking fruit or vegetable. Let's also learn about what those dates mean on the labels. And even so, know that we can use our noses, we can use our senses to try to understand when food has had its last legs, and to avoid spoilage altogether by refrigerating immediately or freezing foods when we get them and we know we're not going to eat them right away. Impulse buying and bulk purchasing. Costco's moved to town. A lot of us love it. I go there because I have a big family. That works for me. But as smaller, single people, it's not going to work. So bulk purchasing can work for us, but it can also work against us. Also, poor planning. How many of us here plan our menus out for the week? 2. That's one huge way to A, save money, B, save food. And I have a little flash up here of an app that I have called Pepper Plate. And it allows me to plan my menus if I'm really good for my family. And then it produces a shopping list for me. And I can just go to the store and buy exactly what I need. And I actually save a lot of money doing this too. Pepper Plate. If you remember anything today, that might be the thing that you remember. The other thing is portion sizes. Portion sizes have, I can't even tell, since the 1950s and 1970s, what was the size of a portion of Coke back in the 1970s? Anybody want to take a guess? 8 ounces. Okay, so what is it now? 16 or 20 ounces, because the bottles that you buy, the plastic bottles, are actually 2.5 servings in one. So any soda, so soda is just a really good example of but also everything. When you go to restaurants, plate sizes have increased. We expect more food, but we don't eat it, which is such an odd paradox. Composting. How many of us compost in this room? Yay. I just want to say this. I think it was in I'm not good with dates, but San Francisco was the first city to have a municipal composting site. Portland just recently spent only $1 million to have curbside composting. $1 million is a drop in a bucket, and most of that $1 million was spent on education. That's something we can do here, now, today. Curbside recycling, composting and recycling. And then one more place that for you to go. It's called Love Food, Hate Waste. It's actually a British website, and I love their social media campaign. They all look like the food they're representing up there. And they have some really practical things that you can do as an individual. They have to save food in your household. They have a menu planning app. They have recipes, but they're all in weights. So unless you have a food scale, it's going to be hard to make their recipes. And they just have some practical solutions for what you can do as an individual, but also taking it out to a community-wide level. And then finally, this is what I've learned to kind of gauge my life. These are my dietary guidelines. These are from 1917. Like I said, I'm a nutrition educator. I talk about nutrition, food science, et cetera, but when I found these guidelines, I thought, this is how to appreciate food. And this is what they thought about in the early 20th century. They thought about not wasting food because of the war at the time, World War I. So if you keep these in mind, these principles in mind, chances are you are going to become a part of the solution for saving food and reducing global climate change. Thank you very much.